mission is simple. Education in action, conservation in action. This is Kamp Kenan. Hey, what's up? Kenan here, and today we're going to talk a little bit about a subject that has come up recently because it's been cold in Florida, and a good friend of ours from Patreon, Cole Wilborn, was asking, what do I think about invasive species dying in the cold in Florida? Should I save them? Is it something that is worth doing? And it's kind of a complicated answer, but I thought we'd put it on to the green iguana. I thought we'd talk a little bit about green iguanas. And first things first, this is Tiger. And you'll notice those of you who know about reptiles are going to look at Tiger, and you're probably going to say, man, that lizard doesn't look good. You're not feeding him, blah, 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 blah. Well, here's the deal. Tiger is ancient. Tiger is at least, 20 years old. I got this animal in 2004. And where did I get him? I got him in the wild. I got him actually on the other side of my fence. He's an interesting little dude. As you can see, if you look at him, you'll see his tail's somewhat regenerated. So he lost his original tail way back before I knew him. He's showing his hips, and he's losing muscle tone in his hind legs. And also the back of his head is starting to get sunken. And guys, he eats. And the reason for this is he's old. And I suspect this guy is at the end of his life cycle. It won't be long, but I keep him. I take care of him. And here's a scoop. The law states in Florida, if you remove an invasive species from the environment, you are now responsible for that animal. So if I let this lizard go, I would get in trouble. I could be potentially fined if someone were to report me, and we don't want that. So the animal becomes your responsibility. One other thing I want to show you, and he's actually hiding out because Squirrel is right over there, and you can just see how iguanas try and get close to the ground, and they don't want to be messed with. Oh, there you are. I want to show everyone your little claw here. So look at his claw. He's got one claw on his front right leg. Don't know how that happened, but this is the shape that I got this lizard in way back in 2004. So there he is. It's starting to get cool. I'm wearing my jacket, so it is starting to get cool, so we're not going to take up too much time here with this lizard. We're going to get him into the reptile room in the warehouse. And but before I do that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the question that was posed to me. And it is a tough one, man. Now, first we have to talk about green iguanas. Green iguanas are found natively in South and Central America, but there are populations of them here in South Florida, and they can be found from the Florida Keys all the way up to where I live on the east coast of Florida into northern Palm Beach County. And then you can also find them up the west coast of Florida, up through Naples, and some reports of them in Tampa. But I don't think it's quite a big population because these cold snaps are even more troublesome that far north into Central Florida. So the breeding populations that we find are really concentrated on the East Coast from Miami to Palm Beach County, all through Broward County as well. And they've done pretty well, and they're all from people who have gotten pet iguanas throughout the years. They got too big, they let them go. The environment usually is pretty good for these guys down here in South Florida, that they reproduce, they feed, they do what they got to do to complete their life cycle. And every once in a while, we get the troubles we're having right now. And the troubles we're having right now, this January 2018, is it's been cold. We had almost 4 nights where it's been below 40 degrees, and that's why these animals have made national news. A couple weeks back, you might have heard about iguanas falling out of trees in Florida. That's how cold it was. What happens is this animal, as you know, is from the tropics, and Florida is not a tropical place. A lot of people think it is, but it's actually subtropical, which means it's just below the tropics. Where I am now, I'm probably about close to 200 miles from, the tropics proper. And that 200 miles is kind of an interesting Goldilocks, well, not really Goldilocks zone, but it's more of a half and half. Most of the time we have warm, mild winters, and we have long, hot summers. But in this regard, this month, which is usually the worst month of the year as far as temperatures for us, it can drop down to near freezing or freezing temperatures, albeit for a short time. Now, short time for a human being, warm-blooded animal, no problem. However, if we get a few days or more, and an animal that's from the tropics, like the green iguana or the Burmese python, any of these animals that have been caught without some kind of refuge, burrow, or maybe utilizing some kind of man-made area. In other words, if they're near a heating vent or even a laundry vent that stays warm, if these animals haven't found some kind of refuge, they are not adapted or evolved, rather, to hibernate properly. Their bodies will start to shut down. One by one, their body systems shut down. The colder it gets. First usually is appetite, then other systems go kind of offline, if you will, until finally they're barely alive and they can no longer hold on to the tree and they just fall right down to the ground. Now, they're not dead at this point unless the cold continues. What'll happen is if the sun comes up, they're able to use that sun's radiation, get warm again, and survive. But if it continued to do that, in other words, if the cold snap is way too long, these guys aren't going to be around, or their bodies aren't just going to be able to handle it. So it's not a true hibernation where they can shut down and properly hibernate and wait out the bad weather. Reptiles are incredible, though, and it's amazing that the iguanas that are here in Florida are able to survive, because sometimes we have a couple weeks of this weather. So they are hardy enough. Reptiles are interesting animals. If they find an area, like I said, that they can kind of wait out that bad weather, they don't need to eat every day. They can live off fat reserves, but they're not in a true hibernation. So that's what's going on. That's a little bit about their life cycle here in Florida and their physiology and so on. But the real big deal, guys, is, all right, look at that. He got a little of the Missouri tortoise diet that I had given to him. That's nice. He's eating. As you can see, he eats. It's just he's not keeping that weight on, and that's kind of a bummer. I'm going to walk over here and get a little bit more. Give me 1 second. Since he's having a little snack, let's give him a few more. It'll keep him around. So what I want to talk about next is, what do you think about taking these animals and quote unquote rescuing them? So that's an interesting question that Cole poses to us. Are you rescuing these iguanas if they're cold? If you follow the Real Tarzan on Instagram, I've never met him, but he seems like a fun guy. He went out and rescued 233 of these animals. Now, is he rescuing it if it's an invasive species? Well, I don't know. That's a tough question. Now, if you're going out there, here's what I think. Going out and grabbing 233 wild iguanas that nature is trying to correct a situation that, shouldn't be. In other words, the cold is what's stopping these animals from spreading, and they don't belong in South Florida. So if you're a purist and you want to see things go back to normal the best they can without a lot of human involvement, which is why iguanas and pythons and other invasive species are in Florida in the first place, then you would say, you know what, let nature correct itself, let nature take its course, and let these animals die. Now, there's also the humanitarian part of us that probably says, oh man, I can't see these things freezing. But here's the deal. So I don't necessarily think it's a rescue mission. It's more of a headache, and I'll tell you why. 233 animals were now removed from the wild, and since that person did that, Florida Fish and Wildlife now says he cannot release these animals back into the wild because it's an invasive species. So now you've got to find 233 homes for all of these lizards. Now that's a lot of work. Now, I don't personally think I'd want to get involved in that. I have enough hard time helping out bush wildlife find homes for wayward iguanas and snakes and tortoises. Because, gosh, that's just going to be really hard to do. The other thing is the fact that these were all wild animals that were kind of frozen. And you see, he's kind of slow right now, Mr. Tiger. He's a little bit slow. He's not as spry as he normally is because it is a little chilly, and we're going to bring him in, and that's what I was in the process of doing when I decided to make this video. So don't worry, he'll be going in a nice warm reptile room here in a moment. But anyway, you get an animal when they're frozen, you put it in a cage, you warm it up. Now try and rehome a wild, full-grown green iguana, and you've got a heck of a problem. They whip, they bite, they scratch, they can mess you up. Just Google iguana bites if you want to see some pretty horrendous ones from some full-size green iguanas. Just because they're herbivores doesn't mean their teeth aren't a functioning weapon. So you got to take that into consideration also. That's definitely going to become a problem. So it's not like these animals can easily be rehomed. It's not like there's a lot of people out there who are able to kind of care for a large lizard like this had they not raised it up from being a baby to tame it. So that's going to be tough. This animal was clearly an animal that was released by somebody, because when I went over to grab him years ago, he didn't really fight me much. He didn't whip. So he was used to being handled. That's not the case with some of the animals that were rescued a few weeks ago. These are wild animals, and you got to be careful. So I don't know. I guess where I sit is, if it were one iguana and I came across it, I'd probably help it out. That's just the way I am. But I wouldn't actively go out into the environment and start removing them unless I had a clear course of action and definite homes for the animals where they can be safely rehomed. Otherwise, I think I would just let nature take its course, because the reality is there's still going to be a bunch of iguanas left here in South Florida. So I hope that answers Cole's question. I really thought it was an important topic because it's been cold this winter, and so many people were amazed that iguanas were falling out of the trees in South Florida. But again, guys, they didn't belong here. It was man that brought them here. So nature is trying to just correct a mistake that man made. It's no fault of the iguanas. I love green iguanas. They're awesome animals. But we've got to also take into consideration the environment and what their impact on that environment can be. So there you go, folks. I want to hear from you in the comments below. Would you save them? Let them freeze? What would you guys do? It's kind of a tough question. We're trying to do the right thing for all animals, but I want to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe to Kamp Kenan. Also, folks, go on over to the Kamp Kenan Army channel and subscribe, and I want to see your iguana habitats. Remember, guys, the best video of the month, the one with the most views on the Kamp Kenan Army channel, you guys get a free t-shirt from Kamp Kenan. So go on over there and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again in another video. I got to get this guy out of this cold weather and into the reptile room. So I'll see you soon. So long, everyone.